In the aftermath of Donald Trump's election victory, a wave of regret is sweeping over some of his staunchest supporters. They believed his promises of job creation, economic prosperity, and a stronger America. Yet, just days after his reelection, many voters are beginning to realize that the policies they backed, particularly his controversial tariff strategies, are causing immediate economic pain. The impact is not confined to the international stage, but is now being felt at home, where businesses, workers, and families are grappling with rising prices, job losses, and growing uncertainty about the future. For some, the belief that Trump's tariffs would only affect foreign competitors like China has crumbled under the weight of harsh reality. The cost of living is rising sharply, businesses are hemorrhaging, and the job market is beginning to feel the strain. As voters look around at the mounting consequences of his policies, they can't help but wonder if the economic prosperity they were promised was nothing but an illusion. This video dives deep into the root of this regret, exploring how Trump's tariffs are affecting voters, businesses, and the broader economy, and why these issues are only going to get worse. The tariff trap: how voters began to question their decision during the election. Many of Trump's supporters believed that his tariff policies would only target foreign nations, especially China, and that the economic benefits would outweigh any short-term disruption. Tariffs, they were told, would help level the playing field for American businesses, bringing jobs back to the U.S. and boosting the domestic economy. However, as the first signs of the tariffs' impact began to emerge, voters quickly realized they were wrong. The truth about tariffs is more complicated than the rhetoric promised. After Trump's reelection, a surge of internet searches for terms like "how to change my vote" and "Trump tariff consequences" skyrocketed, particularly in key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. These regions, where Trump had earned considerable support, were hit the hardest by the economic aftershocks of his policies. Businesses that had flourished under previous trade agreements began to feel the burden of rising costs, and many of these voters began to wonder if their votes were worth the price they were now paying. In some ways, these regretful voters are a reflection of broader disenchantment among working-class Americans who had placed their faith in Trump's promises. For the past several years, Trump's rhetoric painted a picture of an America that would no longer be taken advantage of by foreign governments. The idea of economic independence was seductive, but now, many are discovering that achieving that goal comes with significant economic consequences at home. The immediate fallout: rising prices and job losses. One of the most immediate effects of Trump's tariff policies has been an increase in the prices of consumer goods. What voters didn't anticipate was that, rather than making China pay, it is American consumers and businesses that are paying the price. The cost of goods, from steel and aluminum to electronics and textiles, has risen significantly as a result of tariffs placed on imports. These price hikes are not just an inconvenience, but a financial burden that voters are struggling to bear. Take, for example, the automobile industry, which was one of the first sectors to feel the pressure of Trump's tariff policies. The price of cars and auto parts has surged as a result of increased tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. For many middle-class Americans, buying a new car was once within reach, but now, with these added costs, many are reconsidering their purchases. A similar story is unfolding in industries such as agriculture, technology, and consumer goods, where manufacturers are scrambling to adjust their pricing to accommodate these tariffs. In a particularly telling moment, Walter Masterson, a comedian known for conducting interviews with Trump supporters, spoke with a small business owner from Wisconsin who was grappling with the impact of Trump's tariffs. At first, the owner had been optimistic, thinking the tariffs would only hurt foreign countries, but quickly came to realize that his own business would be the one to suffer. The cost of imported raw materials went up, forcing him to raise prices on the products he sold. In the end, his customers paid more, and he found himself in a difficult position: raise prices and risk losing business, or absorb the costs and risk going under. The ultimate result is that many of Trump's working-class voters, The very ones who had hoped for a better economic future under his leadership are now facing financial hardship. Increased unemployment in the manufacturing sector, rising costs of living, and job cuts are pushing many voters to reconsider their support for the president's policies. The domino effect: how tariffs are hurting small businesses and workers. The effects of Trump's tariffs extend far beyond the consumer. Small businesses across the country are finding themselves in a precarious position as the prices of imported materials continue to rise. For companies that rely on international supply chains, this can mean the difference between staying afloat and going under. Manufacturers, retailers, and wholesalers are facing higher production costs, and many are simply unable to absorb the financial burden of these tariffs. In some cases, businesses are forced to cut jobs, halt expansion plans, or even close their doors altogether. The small business community in America is one of the key pillars of the economy, but it is also one of the most vulnerable. These businesses often operate on razor-thin margins, and even a slight increase in operating costs can have devastating consequences. And as these businesses raise prices to cover their higher costs, their customers are feeling the pinch. In Wisconsin, one of the states that Trump had carried in the last election, manufacturers of household goods are now reporting layoffs and reduced hours for employees. In some cases, employees who had voted for Trump based on his promises of job creation are now being told that their jobs are at risk due to higher production costs. The combination of job cuts and higher prices is creating a toxic economic environment where the very voters who place their faith in Trump are finding themselves worse off than they were before. The consequences for consumers: a rising cost of living. While the impacts of Trump's tariffs are being felt most acutely by businesses, consumers are also feeling the sting. Everyday items are becoming more expensive as a result of the tariffs, from food products and electronics to clothing and household goods. The cost of living, particularly in rural and middle-class communities, is rising at an alarming rate, and many voters who thought they were voting for a prosperous future are now watching their paychecks stretch thinner and thinner. Perhaps most startling is the impact on the tech industry. In particular, video game consoles, once an affordable pastime for many families, are set to increase by as much as 40% in price due to the tariffs. The same can be said for consumer electronics, where major companies like Apple, Samsung, and LG are warning that price increases are on the horizon. These price hikes are the direct result of tariffs on Chinese imports, and they're trickling down to consumers who may have initially supported Trump's policies without fully understanding the consequences. What started as a promise to make America great again is now beginning to feel more like an exercise in economic self-sabotage. As consumers are forced to pay more for products, their standard of living is dropping, and for many, the hope of economic prosperity under Trump is quickly fading into disillusionment. The looming economic crisis: will America pay the price for Trump's policies? As the months go by, the negative effects of Trump's tariffs are only expected to grow. Economists and business leaders are warning that the tariffs will continue to harm the economy, leading to a slowdown in growth, increased unemployment, and a rising cost of living for many Americans. While Trump has promised that the tariffs are temporary measures meant to protect American workers, there's little evidence to suggest that these policies are having the desired effect. Instead, the tariffs are contributing to an economic crisis that will have long-term consequences. From a decrease in consumer confidence to a loss of jobs and rising costs, the American economy is beginning to show signs of strain. Many voters, especially those who once believed in Trump's ability to revitalize the economy, are starting to feel that the policies they voted for have left them worse off than before. Will Trump's voters wake up to the economic reality? In the coming months, it will become increasingly difficult for Trump's supporters to ignore the impact of his tariff policies. As prices continue to rise and job losses mount, the regret felt by many voters will grow. What started as a belief in Trump's ability to deliver economic prosperity has now turned into a painful reality check. The truth is that these tariffs are causing more harm than good, and as voters begin to feel the full weight of their decision, It remains to be seen whether they will continue to support the president or demand a change in direction. For now, the American economy is stuck in a perilous position, one where working-class voters, small businesses, and consumers are paying the price for policies that were sold as a pathway to prosperity. The question that remains is this: will voters continue to back Trump's policies as the economic damage deepens, or will they finally realize the true cost of their vote?